just, let people in without screening them appropriately. Having said that, I think it's very important to recognize that that is not the only option that we have, is bringing these people here. We can create safe zones over there, and I think it actually makes a lot more sense. And we can provide them with humanitarian support. And we need to be working on a ceasefire in Syria, and I believe we would be smart to be working on establishing a coalition government there, because you're not going to get one faction or the other faction in control without a great deal of strife, but you might be able to form a coalition government, at which time you can begin to repopulate the area, repatriate the citizens there.
Dr. Carson, some of the, Donald Trump recently said that he would support creating a mandatory database to track Muslims in the United States. Some of the other candidates in the Republican field have denounced that. Would you support the creation of such a system? And if so, how does that comport with your views on religious freedom?
Well, I think we should have a database on everybody who comes into this country.
I think he meant Muslim citizens in the United States, or U.S. citizens who are Muslims.
Well, hopefully we already have a database on every citizen who's already here. If we don't, we're doing a very poor job.
So do you condemn his comments that we should, have... I mean, well, the idea is stricter scrutiny, tracking Muslims who live here. I mean, what do you think about that idea broadly?
I don't think it's a good idea to treat anybody differently. One of the hallmarks of America is that we treat everybody the same. So if we're just going to pick out a particular group of people based on their religion, based on their race, based on some other thing, that's setting a pretty dangerous precedent, I believe.
Dr. Carson, do you favor more scrutiny of mosques, of more monitoring of I guess, Muslim organizations in this country?
Well, I favor doing whatever we have to do to protect the American people. This is what we have to put on the top shelf, protection of our people. And if, in fact, there are mosques where there's a lot of activity going on that's radicalizing people, they must be treated differently.
Dr. Carson, there's been a lot of questions about your preparation on foreign policy. I'm wondering what exactly those meetings with advisors have been looking like over the past couple of weeks.
Well, I get daily briefings, and I have multiple meetings with people. What I would say is actually listen to my policies. Actually listen to my solutions. You will find that they compare favorably with anybody, but don't listen to the narratives, that try to say, oh, he doesn't know anything, and therefore I can say exactly the same thing that someone else is saying. They say, oh, see, he really knows what he's talking about. It's just craziness. Listen to what I'm actually saying and stop listening to the narrative of those who want to try to create doubt in people's mind. That's the whole issue with going back and looking through every aspect of my life. I said, if you have a real scandal, I'm happy to talk about that. But I'm not going to talk every day about something that happened 50 years ago so that you can detract from the real issues that are going on. So let me just finish. What I encourage people to do, if you want to know something about foreign policy, ask me a question. Don't just sit there and say, he doesn't know anything about foreign policy. That doesn't make any sense.
And Dr. Carson, can you set the record straight on an advisor, Mr. Claridge, who apparently said that you were struggling to understand some of the foreign policy in his briefings?
I cannot explain to you what was going on in his mind. I really don't. I mean, you'd have to get that from him himself.
Have you fired
him?
him?
Well, he's not hired, so I can't fire him.
Is he an advisor, a senior advisor?
He sat in on 2 sessions. And, we appreciate, his input, but he has not been a part of, the foreign policy team, has no idea what we've been talking about. So, I have no idea what he's talking about.
What was your reaction to that when you heard he had said that?
Well, I think my experience with many in the media is that they do tend to take things out of context for a story that they want to write. Usually they've already written the story. And I know that they were also referred to people who really are my senior advisors, who gave them the real story, and they chose to exclude that because they're looking for their narrative.
Dr. Carson.
Many of the GOP candidates have been critical of the president for not maintaining troops in Iraq and then therefore created the ISIS vacuum. The president did not do that because he did not agree with the stipulations with the Iraqi government regarding jurisdiction and liability. Would you have kept U.S. troops in Iraq with the conditions that the Iraqi government negotiated with the Bush administration?
You have to be able to prioritize in terms of good and bad. And the fact of the matter is, we broke it. You broke it. You own it. You don't run away from it. And it was said by many, including George W. Bush, that if you just left there and left it vacuum, he'd tell you exactly what would happen. And it's exactly what did happen.
So you would have left troops there, and they would have been subject to Iraqi law and jurisdiction.
Well, keep in mind, you have the ability to negotiate. You have the ability to change things. You don't have to accept just what they
Both
say.
President Bush and President Obama tried to negotiate that away, and they were unable to do that. Why would you be able to be successful in that?
We're all different people, and we all look at things in different ways. And there are lots of different levers that can be pulled. The fact of the matter is, I don't think that there's anybody, even yourself, if you ask yourself, do you think it was a wise thing for us to leave a vacuum there for ISIS to be able to form? Do you really think that? Ask yourself that question.
Hey, Dr. Carson, you've spoken a lot about Nazi Germany. Do Donald Trump's remarks from last night remind you of registering the Jews?
I don't know what Donald Trump said last night.
He said he wanted to track Muslims with a database in the United States.
Okay, that part I did hear. I don't know that. I hope that we have a database on everybody.
What would you like to keep in that database?
If we don't have a database on every foreigner who comes into this country, we're being negligent.
Do you want to keep Social Security numbers in that database? What would you like to see in that?
Well, I want us to be able to know who they are. I want to know where they came from. I want to know where they're going and why they're here.
But that's already being done.
As the very beginning. If you want to add more things to that, we can talk about it and what the rationale is for it.
Would you subject